you've got this situation in Boston where they've been close. You also don't know where Jaylen Brown's head is about where he wants to be. You realize they've played together 6 seasons already? I mean, how long do you get? And we're
just so much more of a dynamic team when D. White is asserting himself and being aggressive.
Like you said, do whatever it takes to help us win. That's really the only thing that matters to me right now.
Yes, you guys, believe me, I do fully realize with saying this and making this video that inevitably, yet again, we're pulling from a small sample size with how little of the 2023 playoffs we've actually seen. But as NBA fans, I feel like it's almost our job to overreact at times, isn't it? Well, whether you actually want to consider this an overreaction or not, it might be safe to say that from this sample size, that the Boston Celtics have very arguably looked like one of, if not the most dominant teams out of all 16 still remain. And I mean, sure, while you could make the case they've looked this way for most of the 2023 season, they're also just now starting to do some things that we haven't seen for the entire season. And well, if they keep it up, it might be hard to find anyone with an answer for it. But I will say, if you guys love playoff basketball as much as I do not forget to subscribe and turn on those notifications to never miss another video down the entire stretch of the postseason. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Boston Celtics, to dive a little deeper into the changes and improvements that we've seen within the Celtics playstyle since they've actually hit the big dance this year, there are a number of different things with this team that you could definitely make the case are making the biggest impact. And whether that be the ridiculous shooting numbers and offensive display that we've seen from their top 2 guys in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, maybe their next level defensive effort that we've seen regarding their ball pressure and rim protection. I mean, hell, it could even be the complete 180 approach that we've seen from them just in the simple sense of how they're actually scoring. But I think it's become pretty clear that with most of the changes that we've seen from this team, that almost all of them, one way or another, tie back to this guy. Yes, the man himself, Derrick White. And I'm pretty sure that most of you at least expected me to mention him in this video because, I mean, the output that he's put up so far in the postseason has been borderline undeniable. But sure, while the numbers obviously do look great in the box scores and the stat sheets, the attention to detail of how the Celtics have almost completely shifted their use of Derrick White as of recently is easily one of the biggest reasons why they are hitting their peak on this side of the ball. Now, in order for us to fully understand how effectively the Boston Celtics are now using Derrick White within their rotations, we also need to understand how this team thought they were going to originally use him when they acquired him last year. Because yes, while it is very clear right now that Derrick White is more than capable of playing either guard position for an offense, as he's able to both create his own shot and facilitate for others when needed. However, when Boston initially acquired him from San Antonio, they did so with the idea of him acting as an off-ball guard within this offense more than anything else, especially with how ball handler and guard heavy they already were. And while we definitely don't need to dive too deep into the past, it's very clear that this sole playstyle for Derrick White was not necessarily suiting him the best. And to see this, you don't really need to look any further than his below average numbers in the 2022 regular season, followed up by his even worse performance in the postseason. And then, when the Boston Celtics also had the initiative to add Malcolm Brogdon into their backcourt options this offseason, most people out there started to rightfully assume that Derrick White would probably be taking on a very similar role in 2023. However, from what we've seen, especially in the postseason, that is far, far from the case. Because compared to years past, where it's always felt like the Celtics have had multiple facilitator options in the rotation, they've always tried to keep it to a minimum in terms of who was actually running the offense. This year, under new head coach Joe Mazzulla, it feels like one of the only requirements to actually run the offense for this team is having a pulse, and thank God Derrick White has one. Now, obviously, that's just a tad sarcastic, but instead of having all of these versatile playmaking options at their disposal and limiting who is actually able to do the playmaking, they're now confusing the absolute hell out of opposing defenses, and Derrick White's just one example of it. Now, honestly, it just feels weird to even propose the idea that a guy like Derrick White would be more efficient creating his own opportunities on offense, rather than letting some of the biggest defensive magnets in the entire league create these opportunities for him. But the more you know, because apparently Derrick White is that guy, and some of his numbers would even tell you that he's the guy, because despite his small size for an NBA player, his efficiency on pull-ups, driving field goals, and even rare ISO possessions were some of the best out of anyone on the entire team. And while some of these numbers might not seem very impressive to some of you, I'll just leave you with the fact that he had a better ISO completion rate this season than his teammate Jayson Tatum. Granted, he did so on less attempts, but you gotta give credit where it's due. But the best part about Derrick White finding so much more success in this expanded role this season is that he's also thriving in the areas that he actually struggled most last year. For example, his overall field goal percentage by volume this season is the best of his entire career. His catch and shoot three-point percentage, again acting more in the sense of being an off-ball guard, also the best of his career. And with letting Derrick White act in the offense in this best of both worlds scenario, it almost feels as if it's giving this team the most complex combination of interior and perimeter scoring that we've ever seen from them. And that pretty much directly leads into how the rise of Derrick White this season is also impacting the rest of this team. Now, obviously, I don't think it's much of a secret that Derrick White's play is drastically helping this Celtics team as a whole. I mean, him being included in 5 of the team's 6 most efficient rotations thrown out on the court this season would probably be enough to tell you this in itself. But aside from numbers, the film is where you see his impact the most. And also on a side note, while I'm sure that most of you watching this video are more than aware of the different lineup combinations that Boston loves to throw at teams, by A, either going guard heavy and quote-unquote small ball, or B, going big with their defensive frontcourt combination of both Al Horford and Robert Williams. But in terms of this postseason, I don't think I've ever seen them reap the benefits from that possibility like they are right now. Because for example, if you've watched any of this series, you would see that Boston is literally forcing Atlanta to go small ball and even make Clint Capella borderline unplayable due to the Celtics' versatility and speed. And with them forcing Atlanta to match their athleticism, it has opened the paint more than we've seen it for Boston the entire year. And go figure, because this has resulted in the Celtics scoring far more in the paint than we saw for the majority of the regular season, which is also due in large part to most of Boston's offensive initiators scoring inside as well. But then, even when you see the opponent try to go big to stop the interior bleeding, this just typically results in Boston abusing screens and off-ball movement to force wide open looks on the perimeter, which obviously is somewhere they've excelled for years on end. As funny as it is to think about everything outstanding that we've mentioned regarding this team from what we've seen recently, is that we haven't even really got to mention their also ridiculous presence on the defensive side of the ball right alongside this. And if what they did throughout the course of the regular season was enough to impress you, what they're doing right now in the postseason is borderline insanity. And as some of you probably could have guessed, it is again due in large part to the efforts of Derrick White. But of course, the only thing that actually matters in the end is, will all of this be enough to push this team to actually hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy themselves? Well, as always, we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless though, you guys, I'm also extremely curious to hear what you all have to think of this. So please be sure to let me know in the comments what has been the most surprising part to you out of everything we've seen from the Celtics in the postseason. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.